Hello, and thank you for joining today. We're going to review the Appeals and Grievances Kiriworks solution, specifically the intake classification and letter generation. So not taking you through a full case, but kind of jumping around and showing you these two solutions. But let's begin with reporting. Everyone loves reporting. On the screen here, you see our grievances breakdown. After you intake, capture the case within OnBase, work the case, we can report on that immediately. In this case, we only have a half hour to show all this, so I'm going to be going fast. The grievances breakdown, we have it by laid out in the top left with by month, year, broken down by type. These are we can drill down in these graphs. So if we want to see the quality of care, that breaks down immediately. We have active grievances with a watermark here. So we're 10 under where we set our watermark for. So we're looking good on these. And then we could actually drill down even further by provider. So we have a little provider filter, so we can go under Lorna here and actually go down and see her cases individually. So as I drill down through this report, we can get down to the details of this report at the very bottom within that grid there, but also see it at a glance within this graphical view that we have built here. In addition to this grievance breakdown, we also include a 72-hour countdown for all your cases, a report for activities, a current inventory, financial risk, and a timeliness report within the solution. But how do we get the data into the system to actually build out these reports? That all starts with intake. So if we go into our intake queue here, in this case, we received a document via email. The document for the grievance or appeal request form came in. We could see it came from member Michael Scott. In the notes, we see my husband hurt his knee and received physical therapy for it. However, we were not reimbursed and had to pay for all therapy. So from there, we can create the case. If this was a medical record or some other corresponding document, maybe we want to link it to an existing case. If we already received this and have a duplicate, we can mark this as duplicate. If there was multiple cases within this one document, we might be able to, we could copy the document and create multiple cases off of that single document there. And then if it has nothing to do, maybe it got routed incorrectly, we can remove it from this work bucket here. In this case, we'll just create the create case, which will bring up our intake form. The first thing we'll see is classification. This allows us to easily go through the document we received for this appeal grievance, classify it appropriately. So we know this is a request here. Is it a service, drug, or reimbursement? We could see from the notes in there that it's wasn't reimbursed. And then a drug or a service. And once we classify this document appropriately, we could scroll down and see that we auto-filled important request details just based on that classification. So we know that it's a reconsideration based on how we classified it. Priority requested standard, we can change that to expedited if needed from here. The date time received, we are pulling in from when the actual document was scanned into the system. Now this is something that we can work with you all on. If you have different SLAs with maybe a mail room, or your scanning isn't done at the time, maybe we could adjust these dates and times, but the base solution's built with that to capture from the document when that was generated. Down on the left here, under case type, we have auto assign case and assigned analyst. This is where we can either assign it to an analyst to work, or we can have the system route this case to the appropriate user based on workload, maybe some type of load balancing we can build in there to auto assign that case to a different specialist and or workload type there. In this case, I'm going to choose myself so I can see the case when we go back in there. Type of care we know is Medicare. I'm showing the Medicare solution here. And then if we go down a little bit lower, I'll fill in the rest of it here, this information shortly, but one thing I wanted to point out is the initial MD reviewer. So this is important because we don't want to choose the same initial MD that denied this request, so that we have another set of eyes to review this, so we can set that from here. If I scroll up a little bit. So within the provider information, this is where we can actually integrate with your facets or your QNext products, any other system that we can pull that provider or member information easily. So we can do a lookup in the background to pull in that information, so that you're not typing it in twice. Just type in the provider MPI or maybe the member information, and then we could pull that over.
And while Dan's filling that out, one other thing to really drive home is that, one of the things we hear from a lot of customers and prospects and the conferences that we go to is classification is a fairly large issue for a lot of different organizations. So it's important to note that, the text that Dan selected in that initial classification step can be tailored to your own language, your own training. So the type of classification that you've trained your folks to do, this essentially helps them to make sure we're putting the correct information on this form initially. If we don't put the correct information and don't classify it appropriately, it's not going to be processed correctly. We're not going to perform the appropriate tasks. We're going to have missing values in the universe, or potentially the case showing up in the wrong universe table. So this is a big step right from when we get that request, that we can ensure that we're filling out everything appropriately. And as Dan selects the submitter here to a representative, because this was submitted on Michael's behalf, you're going to see that form change a little bit, and it's going to require new information based off of the data that you input. Just like we set the representative under the submitter, Dan mentioned before, if we set that priority to expedite, we'll be prompted to see if we want to go through an expedited priority review or not, and assign an MD. And the same thing goes for different case types. If this is a Part D appeal, we'll collect some drug information. If this is a grievance, we'll collect one or more grievance details and information to resolve all of those as well. Go ahead, Dan.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Yeah, so what I did there was we just have a little demo button to help fill this in, so we're not spending an hour filling out a form here. But as you can see, the form is fully dynamic as we change information, those sections that we need to change, so the submitter rep information will populate as we need that. So the form is fully completed, and we could hit submit there. Once we hit...
Dan, sorry to interrupt you again. One of the questions came through. What about for mailed in documents or faxed or call-in appeals? We know that a lot of folks' volumes are increasing because they're starting to accept verbal grievances.
Yeah, so that same form that we used to create that can be called up via either a favorites on a web page or even hosted on your intranet site to call that form up directly from there. Bring that form up, choose as a phone call, and we could fill that form in appropriately and create the case from there. So once I created that case, we can go in and actually work the case from here. Again, we're going to not work a full case today since we have limited time, but once we go in and create a case, we'll go to the first one here, awaiting task completion. We see we have a reconsideration that's standard for Michael Scott. And then we're taken directly to that case to be worked. A quick overview of the actual interface here, starting with the top grayed out bar is kind of a list of those important details we want to know: the case number, priority of the case, the due date. It's all right up there. You don't have to look through the screen to find that information. Down below that, in the top left of the actual screen here, we have the case overview. This is where we can find the case type, pre or post service, the status. We're in awaiting task completion. We have automatic calculations of the case age so that we can hit those appropriate dates and times to process it accordingly. Down below that, we have the team assigned, so the analyst assigned to John Swisher. If it goes to the admin reviewer, we would have that show up here. A nurse or MD reviewer would show up there as well. And then submitter information. We took that information from the form we filled out. We know it's a representative. We have the submitter name, Jan Scott, and then the member information as well. And then as this case is worked, if it's dismissed, extended, reopened, withdrawn, this system will automatically check these boxes down here so that we can either report on that or not have it show up in our work bucket so that those are appropriately assigned there. In the middle of the screen here, you'll see a couple buckets. We have the top one, our list of documents. If I go into case documents, this is our first taste at letter generation. We have the automatic distribution and generation of the acknowledgement letter. So if I click on that, we can see that the acknowledgement letter was automatically created in the background. No user had to do this. We autofill with the member information, member ID, name, some quick verbiage, and we will use your templates that you have built in your system to build these out, so you're not stuck with our templates that we build for our demo system here. But quick things to point out in there: we received a request for reconsideration of physical therapy that we filled out on that form, so it's dynamically created. Dates and times can be formatted accordingly. If you want the day with the month spelled out, we can do that, or if your organization just uses standard numeric dates, that's fine. We could do that as well there. So that letter was automatically generated in the background as soon as that case was created. Down below the document section, we have a list for those level 1 through 4 cases. As the case closes out, the level 1 case closes out and is sent to that IRE, will automatically create that level 2 case, and that'll the level 1 will populate in the level 2 case, so you still have that for reference as you're working that case. and get the appropriate information in there. Down below that, we have the activities. So as a case is being worked, the appropriate activities will show up for the user to work at that time. There's no jumping around or selecting different areas. In this case, since we have a representative, we have to generate the AOR. When we go into that, your only option is to generate that letter. The user doesn't have to choose, from 100 different templates. The system automatically knows you're generating an AOR, picks that for you, and will create that document. But the first thing we want to do here is acknowledge the outreach of the acknowledgement letter. So we can go into that really quick, and I'll close it out that we perform that outreach. Successfully reached, I'll say here. And then that takes us directly to the next activity. And I'll jump into that 1 second. Just want to point out over on the right-hand side, we have our visual indicator. So if you're a visual person, this shows you exactly where the case is in the current process. So right now we're missing required information. But if it's in a nurse or MD or admin or analyst view, those appropriate sections will turn green and change the view there. So you kind of have a quick indicator showing you where it is in the stage. And then the bottom right are where we can save any notes related to this case if we want to create notes. So let's go in and generate that AOR. So when we click on that task, it immediately brings us up to a window to complete that task. We know that we're generating an AOR, who it's assigned to, the due date. A nice thing here is that we have a help file pretty much on every activity that takes us to a walkthrough exactly of what you have to do. We have this pre-built in the system, but we do allow you to go in, and if you want to change the color, maybe match your corporate theme, you could do that. But maybe if your process change and you add a step or remove a step, you can go in and change these help files. And anywhere you see the little red help box, those are all pretty much all over the system here for every activity, and you can go in and change those. So from here, we'll just click the single button, Generate Letter. We're not going to prompt the user to pick any template. We know it's an AOR generation.
And while that's generating, sorry to interrupt you again, this is another really important point when it comes to that classification that Dan did earlier. Simply because he selected that this was submitted by a representative, the system knows that we need to look for an AOR that is less than a year old. If so, it'll prompt us to review that. If we don't have one or it's more than a year old in our system, it'll prompt us actually to create this document as you're seeing here. And that goes for a number of different things. If this was submitted outside of the timeline, we'll have to submit a letter for good cause. If we've changed a priority, it will automatically prompt the user to generate a right to expedited grievance. So it really comes down to, we want to make sure that we're getting this case classified correctly from the very beginning, so that we can ensure we're going through the proper path and proper activities to complete the case. Back to you, Dan.
Perfect. Yeah, so along the same lines as that automatically generated system document, the acknowledgement letter that I showed you earlier, a user generated this one, but we're still able to populate the dates, the member information, why we're sending them a document, all the important information in there. And then also within this document, the appointment of representative, we have that form built into there so they can fill that out. But one of the most important things is we do include, and we can include, a barcode into that document. So after the representative fills that document out and emails it, sends it via mail back to us, when we scan that in, we could easily read that barcode and automate the delivery of the document back to that case and then set the next activity on it. So as soon as we know that document's back, we will be able to start working that case, and that will be automated in the system. So we'll know when that document is received back into this case. So from here, I'll just accept that. So with the limited time, normally we'd work that through. The next activity we could see came up as an AOR outreach. Did we call after that? We can acknowledge that, but I'm going to close out this and move into another case to show you some different generation of documents there. So in this case, we have a level 2, so that level 1 was completed. We have the level 2 already generated, and we'll have our appropriate list of activities. So from here, we have multiple documents that we have to generate. So our transmittal sheet generation, case summary sheet generation, background data sheet generation, form generation. So as we go through each of these, again, we have the handy help file if we need it. Maybe it's a new user, they don't remember exact steps, but there's that handy help file. We could go to the task and generate the letter. Again, it says generate letter. It's not, asking for a list of possible letters that you can generate. It takes you directly to that transmittal sheet. And as each of these are completed, the activities drop off of the case and don't need to be worked and marked as done. And the reason we're going through each of these letters is to build that case packet. So once we have these letters, we accept them, everything looks fine on them, then we could generate that final large document, the case packet of all of the documents generated before. So each of these documents that I'm generating, simple generate letter button, nothing more. One thing to point out here with the Maximus, I know they have the online form and you can log on to that, but if you're not using that, we can fill out the Maximus form automatically using our letter generation tool. We could check off boxes, fill out information, Michael Scott's member information, automatically populate that in based on the data we have in that case, and from your member system or claim system to auto generate and populate these documents.
Well, Dan accepts that and begins to generate his packet and wraps everything up. One of the other things that's worth mentioning is our generation strategy. So today you may have 3, you may have 10, you may have 20 different decision letters, for example, based off of a plan, based off of different outcomes. Part of the work that we do is when we implement these solutions is to consolidate and normalize those so that when there are changes to one of your correspondence templates, you're making that on one template. And we'll dynamically put in the appropriate information based off of, for example, a decision onto a single template. So, maybe you're saying today, well, we have 200 different templates that we need to be able to manage and bring these over. As part of our implementation, we're going to consolidate those down to very specific use cases for your templates so that they can serve what multiple templates are serving the purpose for today.
Perfect. Yeah, so up on my screen now is our packet generation tool. takes all of those documents that we created during the life of this case to combine into a single packet that then we can send out. So not only can we review these documents from here in the handy icon, those will actually blow up and show you each of those documents so you can review it. Maybe you need to reorder pages or something was scanned in or created incorrectly. You can add documents from here as well. So we have an add document button here. We could preview the packet it's going to create. We could drag and drop pages to assign page 1 to page 3, whatever you might do there. But the whole point of this is to, make the process as fast as possible, automate it. Hopefully we did the work ahead of time, and the majority of these documents will be in the right order and allow you to generate as fast as possible. So in this case, we'll just generate packet. We'll let that come back up here. So as soon as we're taken back to that case, we could see not only does the packet come up for a preview, let me kind of move that out of the way and snap it to the corner. But on the case as well, we have a case packaging task, so I kind of jumped the gun on that one. So the packaging's complete. Let me mark that complete, and then essentially what we're doing here, it's asking us to review that. So does the displayed document appear to be correct? So automatically brings up that packet, allows us to review it side by side to that task we need to complete. You don't have to go searching in a network directory. You don't have to look for this document. Automatically pops it up right next to the activity. Everything looks fine to me. We'll click yes to be complete. And then we bring a little reminder to make sure it's displayed, or make sure the packet has been burned into a CD for CMS. And then from there, we could go through and finish working these cases. As far as the webinar is concerned, wanted to show you those reports that can be generated from the data we capture at the intake phase. So filling out that form, capturing as most data as you can so that we can use that for reporting within the case, generating those letters easily, taking you exactly to the letter you need to create at that point during the case. No searching for templates or anything like that. And then once we close the cases here, then you'll have your full universe available within the application as well. So once we close out of here, the final thing, just showing you a little bit of the universe, Part C and Part D here. We can go directly into that once the case is closed. We translate the data from those cases and build out that universe with the appropriate information that CMS gives us. So having those dates and times in the appropriate format, using the appropriate codes for the type of case it was, and who made the case. But that's all I had for you today. I don't know, John, if there's any more questions or anything you wanted to add?
None that have come up. Just to add on, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. please feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions that you may have. And as Christy said, a following email will be sent out with a demo of the recording. That webinar will also be on our YouTube channel. Thanks everyone for attending.
Guys, we do have one quick question before we sign off. Does the product do any translation to Ncqa categories?
So those categories are part of the solution. Those are chosen at the time of case creation in that initial classification. Additional reporting fields, things like internal grievance category for further detailed reporting, can easily be added to that creation form upon intake and made required or not.
Great, thanks guys. I think that's all we had for now.
Thanks everyone.
Perfect, thank you.